Chapter 14 Divine Miracles Beyond Boundaries. Whoever you are mine. I will not give up. Wherever you are near me. You cannot go beyond my reach. Baba. I pull the wires of this puppet shoe. Wherever you may be, remember that the strings attached to your leg is in my hand, said Sri Sai Baba of Shirdi. Sri Satya Sai Baba is demonstrating that he is using the strings to draw people to his feet like drawing little sparrows. The Eternal Savior, John Hislop, and the image of Jesus. This is the story of Dr. John Hislop of Mexico. Ever since his 16th year, he was attracted to spiritual pursuits. He was an earnest aspirant, sadhaka, who was deeply engaged in the search for truth. He came into contact with eminent personalities and spiritual thinkers like Dr. Annie Besant, Jiddu Krishnamamurti, Paramahamsa Yogananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, Swami Sivananda, and experts in the Buddhist system of Vipassana, and for years progressed in the path of spiritual inquiry following their guidance. But at the end of it all, he realized that the sweet fountain of love is his Western heart had gone dry and it held now nothing but dreadful emptiness. In 1968, he heard for the first time about Sri Satya Sai Baba, came down to Puttaparthi and had his darshan. At the very first sight of Baba, he sensed that he was the root of all spiritual wisdom and awareness. He clearly felt that God Himself had entered his heart as love and that abiding love was truly Baba. As a result of his elevating experience, he could develop the rich insight of viewing the whole universe as sufficed with love. On the eve of Shivratri in 1973, Baba took his lot and some others in Bandipur forest in the district of Mysore. By about noon, they reached the guest house in the forest. At dusk, with the help of some forest dwellers who acted as guides, they walked a long distance until they reached the sands of a mountain stream. They sat in the sandbed of the river for rest. Swami picked up two small green branches of a bush, placed one across the other in his palm, and asked Hislop what it was. Hislop said it was the cross. Swami closed his palms over it and gently blew 3 times on it. When he opened his palms, the cross bore the image of Jesus. He gave it to Hislop and said, "This is exactly how Jesus Christ looked at the moment he gave up life. It does not look at all as imagined by painters or as described by writers. He had no food for 8 days. His stomach was empty and drawn inwards. His body became dry and his ribs became prominently noticeable. Hislop stared at the cross in speechless wonder. Hislop stared at the cross in speechless wonder. Baba went on. This cross is actually made out of the same wood of the original cross on which Jesus was crucified. It took me some time to search for and find that 2000 years old wood. Every bit of the original cross has disintegrated and merged with the constituent elements. I had therefore to gather these elements, and when I had collected enough to make this cross, I materialized it. The image of Jesus, as you see on this cross, is the same as the one at the time of his death. After a few weeks, Hislop and his wife went back to Mexico. As the image on the cross was very tiny, the facial features of Jesus were not clearly visible. Walter Wolf, one of Hislop's friends, took several color photographs of the image of Jesus part by part, enlarged them, and made a larger picture out of them. The finished picture was extraordinarily touching, arousing boundless kindness and compassion. The photographs were all arranged on a table so as to reveal the intricate and minute carving on the image. Viewers wondered at the creative power of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai. Until that day, the sky was absolutely clear all along the Mexican coast. But all of a sudden, without any warning, a terrible lightning flashed amidst dark clouds. Strong winds gathered speed in few moments and threatened to smash the window panes. Door curtains were flying. In the midst of this chaos that developed all of a sudden, Mrs. Hislop recalled, "It's now 5 p.m., and today is Friday, the same day and time of Christ's death by crucifixion. What is happening now before our eyes had been described in the Bible too." She produced a copy of the Holy Book and read the relevant section. At the moment Jesus died on the cross, there was a great storm with thunder and lightning filling the sky. The decorated hangings of pictures and photographs on the wall in the room flew away. Everyone present there in the home of Hislop felt delighted at the witnessing a phenomenon too wonderful for their imagination. On the next day, the San Diego Tribune reported the heavy storm that had suddenly occurred quite unexpectedly. Hislop and his friends felt that there must be some sort of relation between the sudden recurrence of the out of season storm that had reportedly occurred 2000 years ago and the cross materialized by Bhagavan Sai Baba. When Dr. Panibandha reported this incident to Swami, he confirmed that the incident had actually occurred and that they were truly related as guessed by Hislop and his friends. Indra Devi. Born a Russian, Indra Devi had mastered yoga from India. She discarded her original Russian name, Dr. Mrs. Kenyo, and assumed the Indian name of Indra Devi. She used to teach yoga in her ashram in Tecate in Mexico. When she was 60 years old, she happened to meet Howard Morford in Madras and heard from him for the first time about Sri Satya Sai Baba. She was not particularly impressed. Once, while in Mumbai, she happened to see the treatise Brigu Samhita, which was in the possession of Chayasastri Kantilal Pandya. She looked for and found what was written about herself in that book. She read, "Because of the punyam accumulated in your early lives, you are about to have darshan of some exalted personage. Even at this moment, you are under his protection." The account further clarified, exalted personage means God. In 1996, when she was in her 66th year, she had the darshan of Sri Satya Sai for the first time. At the very first sight, she developed strong faith and belief in Swami's divinity. Swami gave her an interview and asked what she would desire to have. She did not ask him for worldly wealth or even salvation. She simply prayed, "Swami, please light up the spiritual lamp in my heart." Swami materialized and gave her a locket and vibhuti and assured her, "Whenever you need anything, ask me. Irrespective of the physical distance between us, I will hear your prayer. I will always be with you." There occurred once a vast fire in Mexican mountain that destroyed thousands of houses and many acres of forest. It was feared that the conflagration might consume the Psi institution in Mexico and the USA. Unable to withstand its fury, many people abandoned their homes and possessions and fled for their life. Traveling by car, they reached the top of a mountain and took refuge in a house. They spent 4 hours there praying to Sai Baba. The fire raged below them all round the mountain. After it died down at last, they returned fearing the worst. To their relief and surprise, they found that the Sai Nilayam of Indra Devi was unscathed, even though everything around it got complete gutted. The unscathed Nilayam, untouched by fire, stood in the prayer hall, remained as beautiful as ever. They felt that Baba had personally stood guard at the place and safeguarded the Nilayam. At the precise time this daunting fire was raging, Indra Devi was in Chicago giving a discourse about Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. She saw the ravage and severity of the fire on television. She also read in newspaper that the fire had occurred quite closer to her Sai Nilayam. But she was not at all worried. She thought, "It belongs to Bhagavan. He will do with it as he wishes. If it is his will that it should burn down, so it will." True to her steadfast faith, the institution remained absolutely safe. A few days later, she received an invitation from Baba to come over and inaugurate the Women's College in Anantapur. She came all the way from Mexico and participated in the celebrations. Before she left for Mexico, Bhagavan materialized for her a locket bearing the image of Goddess Lakshmi. While giving it to her, he said, "This is for your home. This will protect it. Hereafterward, it will never be threatened by hazards of fire." When Indra Devi came to Puttaparthi, she organized yoga classes for the benefit of school children. Baba was pleased with her services. He materialized a diamond studded ring for her. She had long ago given up wearing any jewelry, but she would wear this ring, she thought, provided it bore Swami's image. Swami sensed her thought. He took the ring back and gently blew on it. Immediately it changed its form. Now it bore a small stone with Swami's image on it. Swami put it on her finger himself and said, "Whenever you wish, you can see me in this ring. Only you and nobody else can thus see me. When you look into this ring, you will find me exactly as I happen to be in India at that moment, and you can see what I am doing." Indra Devi was once in California. She looked into the ring and saw Baba sitting in a white car. She recorded a note in her diary. Swami is traveling somewhere. On another occasion, she found Baba talking to devotees seated in front of him in a semicircle. The scene she felt was not of Prashanti Nilayam. She noted that detail too in her diary. Sometime later, when she came to Prashanti Nilayam, she checked up with Sri Kasturi about her two visions. He confirmed that the first one showed Swami while on tour. Indra Devi questioned, "But Swami's car is not white." Sri Kasturi classified that at the time of her vision, Swami had indeed travelled by a white car. The second vision was also explained by Sri Kasturi. It happened in far off Kerala. On 21st November 1970, in the course of the 4th All India Conference of the Office Bearers of Sri Satya Sai Seva Samitis held in Prashanti Nilayam, Indra Devi spoke in the presence of Bhagavan. In her speech, she referred to the above two incidents. Sri Kasturi quipped, "So you have been spying on Baba." Sai Baba as well as the entire audience burst into laughter. Indra Devi rendered invaluable service to the spread Swami's message in the USA through films, books, and lectures. During her campaign, she faced an unexpected problem. Those who attended her gatherings began to request for Vibhuti materialized by Swami. On her next visit to India, she mentioned this to Swami. Suddenly, a beautiful silver container with a lid materialized in Swami's hand as if someone handed it over to him from above. Swami showed it to her and said, "This is a container of inexhaustible vibhuti. You may distribute any amount of vibhuti from this, it will never run out." He emptied the entire quantity in it on a piece of paper and gently tapped it. It got filled up again with fresh vibhuti. As he handed over the silver container to Indra Devi, he directed her to use the vibhuti from it for healing the sick. Thereafter, whenever sick persons came to her, she used to tell them about Swami's glory and give them some quantity of the holy ashes. This simple treatment restored many to sound health. When Indra Devi came to Puttaparthi for the Shivratri festivities in 1969, Swami invited her, Walter Cowan, his wife Elsie Cowan, and some others into the interview room. After some discussions on spiritual matters, Swami materialized a beautiful rosary containing 108 pearls and showed it to them. Everyone was anxious to see to whom Baba would present it. Baba said, "This is no ordinary rosary. It is extremely potent. It can heal every chronic disease. This is very essential for the service which Indra Devi is doing." The precious rosary was presented by Baba to Indra Devi. She was in tears of joy. "Swami, will it heal any and every disease?" she asked. Baba replied, "Except those caused by evil karma deeds inherited from earlier lives. It heals every disease. Even I will do nothing for those who suffer from inherited karma." Attendance at the bhajans in Indra Devi's yoga center began to grow. Many of them used to press her to initiate them into some sacred mantra. Unable to cope up with such insistence, she took her problem to Swami. He advised her, "The most potent of all mantra is Om. But as you know, it cannot be given to any and every person. When someone asks for initiation into mantra, look at me in your ring and ask me. Whatever mantra comes to your mind at that time, give that to the seeker. It shall become the mantra coming from me." With these words, he granted her the spiritual authority and competence to initiate devotees into holy mantra. Indra Devi was blessed thrice over. Firstly, she was blessed to be able to have Swami's darshan any time of her choice. Secondly, she was blessed with the power to heal the sick. And thirdly, and most importantly, she was blessed with the spiritual authority to initiate aspirants into mantra. She could thus control the physical well being as well as spiritual progress of devotees. And she had also the additional privilege of accessing Bhagavan at will on her spiritual internet, if we may so describe it. It is worthy of note that Swami has not granted even one of these three blessings to any other person. Om Shri Sai Ram. Dr. Frank Baronowski. Dr. Frank Baronowski was a professor of physics in the University of Arizona, USA. He acquired special skills in the Kirlian photography, biomagnetic field radiation photography, for photographing the multicolored aura of illumination that envelops every living being, including humans, with a special camera known as Kirlian camera. The color, contrast, intensity, breadth, and depth, as well as brightness, vary from person to person and also with the bodily health and intellectual and spiritual level of the subject. While it may be about a foot deep for ordinary person, it could extend to even 2 feet tall all around in the case of great thinkers, yogis, and spiritually evolved persons. This aura comprises luminosity of innumerable shades of color. When the person is quite healthy and cheerful, it will be white. When he is in a mood of affection, pity, or compassion, it will be bluish. When the mood is of intense love, the color turns rosy. In anger and hatred, it becomes red. Moreover, this illumination is not ordinarily visible to the naked eye. One in a million might have the gift of seeing it, but with the Kirlian camera, the aura can be clearly photographed. In fact, even the changing mood of the subject can also be seen in such pictures. Dr. Boronsky used the Kirlian camera for taking photographs of auras of thousands of world leaders, kings, queens, holy persons, and religious heads. He did not come across any person with aura exceeding 2 to 2.5 feet in breadth. Dr. Boronsky had read some books about Baba in America. He heard about his divinity, but he did not form any firm faith in him. On the Christmas day of 1977, he happened to visit a certain home. Members of that family, being Sai devotees, were celebrating Christmas singing Sai bhajans. Not quite relishing it, he removed himself to a room on the upper floor, put out the light, and went to bed. On a table in the room was standing a photograph of Sri Sathya Sai with an unlighted candle in front of it. Even as he was looking at it, there was a little crackling sound, and the candle suddenly burst into flame. Nobody had come in. No one lighted the candle. How did it get lighted? He was somewhat puzzled, and he once again looked at the photograph and saw Swami smiling at him. The very next year, that is, in 1978, Dr. Boronsky came to India to participate in a conference being held in Bangalore. He made use of that opportunity to travel all over the land and to photograph with his Kirlian camera hundreds of yogis and holy persons. In no case did the aura exceed 2 feet in breadth. One morning he saw Swami for the first time in Whitefield, early at 5 a.m. When he set eyes on Baba, he was stunned. The effulgence around Swami was beyond his wildest imagination. It extended beyond 40 feet. As devotees went on singing bhajans, it was spreading further and further, enveloping the whole building, and thousands of devotees gathered there. It was so bright that Baronsky looked all round him to check up whether it was caused by the numerous mercury vapor lamps around. As Swami moved, the shimmering envelope of luminescence also moved, like a living, vibrant sheep. He concluded that it must be integral to Swami and must be emanating from him only. Summer classes were being conducted at the time. Summer classes were being conducted at that time. So Baronsky could watch Swami continuously for 3 to 4 days. One day Swami called upon him to address the gathering. Baronsky described his unparalleled experience. I am a scientist. I am basically a Christian, but my faith in that religion is not particularly intense. By means of this Kirlian camera, I investigated 15,000 eminent persons in every walk of life all over the world. But here I have discovered something I never met with anywhere else. The illumination radiated by Baba is a spectacular rosy color, which is characteristic of the intense, the deepest, and the most selfless love. What is also unique is that his aura spreads and submerges not merely this audience hall, but far beyond, as far as I can see, like a flood of light. It is engulfing everything. This rosy luminescence is also displaying silver and gold streaks, intensely bright and perfectly clear. Here is a fantastic spectacle which I have never encountered till now. Swami is the full embodiment of love. Sampurna Prema Murti. When Swami comes near us and touches us, that effulgence is flowing into us also. We are getting immersed in that mighty stream of ethereal glow. Swami is the walking personification of love. As I am speaking here, you will notice that my body is shivering. Don't you see? But this shiver is not because of fear. The suprahuman aura that surrounds him is indescribable glory is so moving that my body is shivering uncontrollably. Swami materialized a diamond ring and gave it to Dr. Bronsky. He also gave him the much sought after interview. Swami spoke about his month old grandson and told him, the day you return to America and reach home, your grandson will be subject to a surgery. Don't worry, the operation will be successful. The baby will be restored to complete health. Swami told all this on his own. Dr. Baronsky made no mention of the baby at all. However, he did not pay much heed to Baba's words about the child. He was aware that doctors had said that the operation could be performed years later after the baby growing up. He was therefore surprised to learn on reaching home that the baby had indeed been operated upon that very day. The doctor who performed the operation was an Indian. Dr. Baronsky told him all that he had experienced in Puttaparthi and showed him the diamond ring presented by Swami. As Swami had assured him, the baby soon got well. Dr. Baronsky was surprised at Swami's sarvajñatva, total awareness of past, present, and future. In fact, Dr. Baronsky was the disciple of Ulf Messing, a Russian philosopher. Ulf got interested in spiritual aspects of life even at a very young age, and at the age of 15, he began his search for spiritual knowledge. In the process, he came to India in 1936 and was traveling on a train to Anantapur. At the Kamalapur railway station, he was amazed to see the young Satya Sai Baba, who was barely 10 years old. But Ulf noted the unfathomable aura around the boy and explained what a divine personality he is. Ulf followed young Satyam to his home but could not meet him. On his return to Russia, Ulf set up a training center to train young people in the use of Kirlian camera, and before his death asked one of his students, Dr. Baronsky, to go to India and study Sai Baba. Dr. Baronsky was amply blessed. He was given the unusual opportunity to investigate Swami's divine power with his scientific equipment. And fully convinced by what he found, he proclaimed the same to the whole world with the deepest conviction. Dr. Art Ong Jumsai. It was around 1945. The Second World War had not ended yet. Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai materialized himself in front of a house in Bangkok. He called the lady of the house, gave her some vibhuti, and told her to sprinkle it all over the roof of her house and disappeared. He spoke in her own language. She saw that the powder given to her looked like white sand. She did not, however, disregard his words and sprinkled it all over the roof of her house. Within a few minutes, an air raid took place. All houses in the neighborhood except hers were destroyed with bombs bombarding all over. Art Ong Jumsai Na Ayodhya was a young boy in the family. In due course, Art Ong became a student of science. He obtained a doctorate degree from the Imperial College of Science and Technology. He worked as an advisor to some ministers in his country. He rose high in the professional echelon. In 1971, NASA of the USA advertised for the post of a scientist in connection with its project of sending an unmanned space vehicle to explore Mars. Art Ong applied and got the job. The project was to land a vehicle safely on the surface of the planet, overcoming all odds, and to collect material from the planet's surface for investigation in NASA. Art Ong was given the task of planning and designing the equipment needed. Arrangements were made to build a model of Mars in the laboratory with similar characteristics, a model of the rocket and the surface lander, and to carry out investigations. Funds required for the entire project were to be provided by NASA. In a few months, Art Ong was able to develop the needed equipment that was to be tested in the laboratory. But, as had earlier been feared, the landing unit burned off as soon as it entered the Martian atmosphere. After some more months, Art Ong built another, but that too met the same fate. It went on for several times. The whole project seemed doomed. Enormous outlays of money went to waste. Poor Art Ong did not know what to do. He felt terribly depressed. Finally, he could make a successful one. It successfully completed laboratory tests without any hitch. A life-size rocket, which was named Viking, was readied and in due course launched. It was successful and samples of materials from the Martian surface could be obtained. Art Ong realized that more than his own efforts, it was an invisible hand that helped him in his success. Following this, he abandoned the pursuit of science and busied himself with the search of God. Together with his mother, he came to India and arrived in Whitefield. Bhagavan asked Art Ong to work in Satyasai organization and spread spiritual education linked to human values. Soon enough, some dramatic events happened. Art Ong was totally engrossed in Swami's activity. He had no time to look after his own factory in Bangkok. One day, the security guard was sleeping in his room at its entrance. He had bolted the door from inside. But despite that, Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai entered the room, woke him up, and bade him to attend to his duty properly. He spoke in the Thai language. The guard, who understood his instructions well enough, could not imagine how the stranger could enter the room, even though its door had been bolted from inside. Next day, too, the same thing happened. When the head of the factory, Art Ong, arrived, the security guard told him everything that happened, apologized for his lapse, and added that the whole incident was quite baffling and inexplicable. He then noticed that the decorated photograph of Bhagavan Sri Satyasai in Art Ong's room. He told his master that it was this same person who entered the guard room in the night and alerted him. A few days later, Art Ong arrived at Prashanti Nilayam. Bhagavan was giving a discourse on the need for linking educational systems with human values. In the middle of his discourse, he invited Art Ong to the dais and to speak. In his talk, Art Ong described his great experiences and how Swami has been kind to him with his loving care and affection. From that day onwards, Dr. Art Ong Jumsai, the distinguished scientist, has been fulfilling himself through servicing the divine mission of Bhagavan, disseminating the nectar sweet spiritual precepts of Swami in the West with renewed dedication and with stronger faith. In 1998, Dr. Art Ong started the Institute of Satyasai Education in Bangkok to propagate the ideas of Sri Satyasai education in human values. The institute has organized an international conference in September 2000 on strengthening values education in Prashanti Nilayam, in which 650 educators from as many as 78 countries of the world participated. Swami blessed several participants not only with valuable diamond rings but also with several inspiring addressees. Om Shri Sai Ram. Be happy that this is the only thing I ask of you. John Sinclair was a multimillionaire belonging to the state of Connecticut in the USA. At one stage of his life, he was caught in a maze of business problems that destroyed his mental peace. One night, as he sat in his room, he prayed to God. I do not know where you are and what you look like. I only know one thing, that is, that you do exist. Please help me. He prayed most earnestly and in total surrender. From then on, he began to notice that God's invisible hand was protecting him. One day he felt he noticed someone walking through the inner hall in his home between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. He stared steadily. The person stood unmoving. John Sinclair did not understand who he was and what was he there for, but he could recognize that he experienced some vague sense of happiness and joy that was indescribable. In a similar manner, he had the same vision on another night. He was sure that it was no dream, it was starkly real. Sinclair went to the spiritual center, Adhyatmik Kendra in New York, and mentioned his recent experiences to someone there. The person said, "Just a minute, please," went inside and returned with a small packet of vibhuti in his hand, and he gave it to Sinclair, uttered Sai Ram. He also spoke at length about Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai and assured him that it was Swami who had given darshan to him. Sinclair was deeply touched. He was but a mere businessman in far off America. His knowledge of anything spiritual was next to nothing. He had not read even a single book about Sri Satya Sai Baba, yet the Lord had visited his home in person and granted darshan to an insignificant person like him. In his mind, he fell at the lotus feet of Swami at that moment. His heart began yearning for Bhagavan's grace and for Bhagavan's love. Very soon it grew and assumed unbearable intensity. As a consequence of that unbearable yearning to Baba and also Baba's compassion, Sinclair set off for Prashanti Nilayam. On arrival, Swami invited him into the interview room and said, "I came twice to you." Sinclair stared at Swami in bewilderment. Swami continued, "I have done a lot for you. I have given plenty to you. Even then, you have no peace. Why don't you do something for Swami?" When he heard Swami's words, Sinclair was prepared to give whatever Swami asked for. He said, "Surely, Swami, most certainly." Swami smilingly told him, "Be happy always. That is the only thing I ask of you." Sinclair was stunned to hear what Swami desired of him, nothing but his own well being. Speaking in the magnificent Purnachandra Auditorium on the auspicious Guru Purnima day in 1993, Sinclair said, "When I was a young boy, being brought up as a Christian, I used to feel miserable that I was born 2000 years after the departure of Jesus Christ. Someone has truly heard my cry of agony. Here is sitting that very God who had sent Jesus to us." Sinclair also recounted a couple of miraculous incidents. A few months back, before my arrival in Prashanti Nilayam, I had to make a business trip to another place. I told my wife that I would pilot my helicopter myself. She tried to dissuade me. "Your mind is very much distracted nowadays because of your business problem. Why don't you engage a professional pilot?" Satya Sai Baba is too busy to sit with you all the time to protect you, as if he were to protect you only all the time. He has got far too many people to look after. Why do you waste his precious time? I told her, "I am a qualified A class pilot. Why do you doubt my flying skills?" I piloted my own helicopter, but as feared by my wife, the engine of the helicopter failed on the way. The hydraulic system gave away. I lost control of the craft and I knew that death was certain. I pulled out Swami's photo from my pocket and looked at it. The next moment, I found Swami right in the helicopter. He piloted it skillfully and landed it safely on the flank of a hill. He opened the side door, pulled me out carefully, pushed the helicopter away, and disappeared. That is how Bhagavan has been saving me, time after time, drawing me closer and closer to his lotus feet. I will now describe to you a more astonishing incident. That woman who is sitting in the front row here in this gathering is Marlene Sinclair. She is an expert horse rider. She acquired a fine horse and rode it and also trained it for competitions. Once she was riding fast in the riding course and tried to clear a high wall. Unfortunately, the legs of the horse hit against the wall. That girl was thrown off her saddle and her head dashed against the ground, and the 1,800-pound heavy horse landed on her. It took a full 45 minutes before the girl was admitted in the emergency ward of a hospital. I got the message on phone and rushed there. I took out the small packet of vibhuti from my pocket, and as I applied it to the wounds on her face, I said, "This is just like the holy water of Christianity." I also put a little quantity in her mouth. When I went to see her on the next day, there was not a single wound on her face. 3 months later, she has fully recovered and resumed writing. But the story does not end here. In the interview room, Swami looked at Marlene and asked, "Did I not rescue you from paralysis?" She said, "Yes, Swami, yes, you did." After the interview, I asked Marlene, "What is it that Swami asked you and what did you answer him?" She then told me, "On that day of my accident, I lost an eye. When the horse landed heavily on me, I was paralyzed on one side. As I lay in the rain helpless, a person stood by my side watching me. When I was being taken by ambulance to the hospital, he was by my side in the vehicle in the emergency ward too. He was by my side all the time. He also kept vigil constantly on me throughout the night at the hospital. That person is none else but this Sai Baba. He made my eye all right and he healed my paralysis too. Only then did he move out of the hospital. Even though this incident happened several years ago, I do not know about it at all until the conversation began between Baba and her in the interview room. This is an excellent instance to show that Swami is much more intimate than even one's mother and father. My Swami, I have full faith in you. I totally surrender myself at you, concluded Sinclair. Jagadisan. He was working as Deputy Director General in the Industrial Development Authority, Government of Malaysia. Whenever he spoke about Swami, he used to be contemptuous, malicious, and wild tongued in criticizing him. His name is Jagadishan. Once it so happened that Jagadishan went to the home of his mother in law. He saw Swami's photograph in her room. He was virulent in his condemnation of Swami. For 2 long hours, he railed and ranted and finally said to the picture, "If you really possess all those divine powers as claimed by these people, show me proof thereof. Only then will I believe these fairy tales." He did not realize that he had literally thrown a challenge to Bhagavan Baba. No sooner had he said these words than Vibhuti appeared on that photograph, the picture that provoked his ire. He felt as if lightning had struck him. He realized that in this world of scientific thought there was something transcending science, something incomprehensible to science. 4 months later, Jagadishan visited India and travelled to Prashanti Nilayam. In the audience hall, Swami neared him and gently moved his loving lips. "Malaysia?" Surprised and wondering how Swami knew that he came from Malaysia, he answered, "Yes, sir." Swami invited him into the interview room. Jagadishan was now 32, but somehow felt as if he was a boy of 7 sitting with his father. The fatherly affection and love of Swami melted his heart. Copious tears flowed down his cheeks. He had believed in Swami only for a mere 4 months now. Earlier to that, he had nothing but utter contempt for him. His vileness during that dark period was hanging heavy in his heart, and he could no longer hide his misery. He decided to make a clean breast of it. "Swami," he cried, "please forgive me. Till 4 months ago, I had never believed in you." Bhagavan shook his index finger from left to right and again to left and smilingly said, "Ha ha, you were not a mere non believer. You strongly opposed. You were a strong opposition." Jagadishan collapsed in grief and shame. He fell at Baba's lotus feet and began literally weeping. Swami held his shoulder and slowly raised him. "Don't cry, Bangaru, don't cry. Swami knows everything." Nowadays, at Swami's suggestion, he is functioning as the central coordinator for the Satyasai organization in the East and fulfilling his destiny in the service of the Sai spiritual mission. Mala Vikshepa Avarna. In one of his discourses, Swami pointed out that man is gifted with intelligence and discernment, yet he is not able to recognize his true self. The reason for this, said Swami, is the cumulative effect of the deeds, karma, done in previous lives. Because of good deeds, sat karma, One takes birth as a human being. However, if in this human birth a person indulges in doing evil like adultery, thievery, untruthfulness, and so on, the consequences too will be evil. These are of three types of evil nature: Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarna. These obscure the spiritual vision of man and prevent him from recognizing the glorious form of his own true self, Swaswarupa Jnana. Swami then proceeded to elaborate what Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarana mean. Mala is the cumulative effect of the evil deeds done during previous lives. As an instant in point, here is a story. A diamond merchant was going on a business trip. He traveled on a horseback, and as he rode fast, his bag containing diamonds dropped on the ground unnoticed. Two friends traveling behind him found it. At the sight of the precious diamonds, avarice took hold of their minds. Each wanted to grab it for himself. While the younger one kept watch over the bag, the other went searching for food. On the way, he got another vicious idea to eliminate his friend altogether. Accordingly, he mixed poison in the food meant for his friend. He came back and told the waiting friend, "Dear younger brother, have your meal first, and while you eat, I will keep watch on the gems." The younger one had his own plans. As the elder one bent over, the younger brother dealt a savage blow on his neck with a heavy sword. Jubilant that he was now the sole master of the gems, he ate his food with relish. But as it had been contaminated, he too died of poison. Although the two friends did get hold of the precious diamonds, they could not derive any benefit therefrom. It is Mala that led to them to conduct evil. The root cause of Mala is evil thought and evil deed, which can be destroyed only through instantly remembering and thinking of God. There is no other way. Next is Vikshepa, which means lack of steadiness of mind. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was serving as priest in the majestic temple of goddess Kali in Dakshineshwar. That temple had been built by a pious lady called Rani Rasamani. She visited the temple one day and asked Ramakrishna to sing a song in praise of Devi. While he sang, devotees, including Rasamani, were moving their heads in full tune with the song. Paramahamsa suddenly stopped singing and gave a resounding slap on Rasamani's cheek. He scolded her. "Your body is here, but your mind is elsewhere, on property litigation in the High Court in Calcutta." She was noble and devout. So she took her chastisement in proper spirit as a deserved punishment for her unsteadiness of mind, that is, Vikshepa. To distance mind from Vikshepa, there is only one way: relentless practice of concentration and single mindedness. Now comes Avarana. I am a student. I am a teacher. I am a Brahmin. I am a Kshatriya. I am a woman. I am a man, and so on. In this manner, a person falls into delusion. I am this body. Ignorance, agyan of this kind is avarana. If you meditate deeply and with discernment, Vivek, you will soon realize that you are neither a student, nor a teacher, nor a Brahmin, nor a Kshatriya, nor a female, nor a male. The reality, the truth is, you are the embodiment of Atma. To recognize this reality is to get over avarana. A pregnant tigress was crossing a river when she suddenly gave birth to a cub. The mother was swept away by the rushing water, but the cub reached dry ground somewhere downstream and joined a herd of sheep. Mixing with the sheep day after day, in the course of time, it totally forgot its true identity of a tiger. It ate grass as the sheep did. It bleated like the sheep. It completely lost consciousness of its natural and inherent strength and capability. Sometime later, a tiger attacked the herd and noticed the tiger cub in the midst of the herd and was surprised to see it behaving just like a sheep. The tiger caught hold of the cub and dragged it to the water pool. It pointed to the cub's image in the water. "Look, you are not a sheep, you are a tiger. Recognize your true identity." Only then could the cub learn the truth. The only way to remove avarana is through total surrender to God, Daivarpana. In his discourses, Swami addresses us as Divya Atma Swarupalara, embodiments of the divine Atma. He is thus time and again reminding us of our true identity. He is constantly exhorting to each one of us. You are not merely a body of flesh and blood, you are the embodiment of Atma. We realize that Mala, Vikshepa, and Avarana can be got rid of by constantly having Swami's name dance on our tongues. That is, by chanting his name all the time, firmly seating Swami on the altar of our heart and leading spiritual, pure lives with the spiritual enlightenment Swami is blessing us with. Humble homage to the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai. Om Shri Satya Sai Parabrahmane Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. End of chapter 14. Om Sai Ishwaraya Vidmahe Satya Devaya Dhimahi Tanna Sarva Prachodayat.